Hello. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Uh, so I'm just gonna make a quick little tutorial on shadow masking for VRSLGI. Now, shadow masking is a baking technique used to black out real-time lighting of sorts. In VRSLGI's case, it will allow you to kind of control where the lighting can and can't go and making shadows that kind of fit that. So, what kind of a example would that be? Well, here in this scene, I have like a simple scene here that can kind of demonstrate what I mean. So in this scene, I got two wash lights, one blue, one green, and as you can see in this scene, they're kind of just lighting up the room like normal, but one thing that you might notice is that when you move one of these lights around, right, you can kind of see like the GI kind of almost clips through certain objects. So there's no shadows, right? Because right now there's no masking. And so when you move the light around, in areas, this whole section should be pretty much black, but it's not. And same thing on this side. If I were to move the blue one over, you can see the green kind of starts showing on the other side of this wall when there shouldn't be any green at all. Same for the blue. Blue's kind of going on this side. So this is where shadow masking come in. We can create masks that kind of block out where each light can or can't go, right? The difference about the VRSLGI masking system is that it's on a per mask per channel basis, meaning that you can choose one of three masks per light, and then of those three masks you can choose the red, green, blue, or alpha channel that light is going to be based on. So that means you can have a total of up to 12 separate shadow masks for one world, or for one material anyway, and each light can choose between one of those 12 shadow masks to read from. For this tutorial, we're going to make one mask and have it read on the blue and green channels respectively, to demonstrate how we can make one. So shadow masking is a lot like light mapping, except it's a bit different in that you don't want to actually use the light map UVs. What do I mean by that? So for meshes in Unity, meshes can have multiple UV maps, and these UV maps are considered UV map channels. Here in this Blender scene, I have the exact same setup that I built and just imported into Unity. And in this setup, all the meshes are separate, but they all have 3 UV maps. Now the first UV map is, your standard UV map that you would use to put like textures and things on, like normals, diffuse textures, all that good and stuff. Your second UV map, however, that's reserved for your standard Unity light mapping. So if you were to use Unity's light mapper or bakery, it would use this channel up. In Unity, there's an option to generate light maps, and when you do that, it would also just overwrite whatever UV maps are in this channel. So as a result, for our shadow masking, we don't want to use either of these channels, because this channel, we're going to be using all our normal textures on, and for this channel, where our light maps are going to go. So that leaves us with the next channel, the third channel. The third UV map channel is technically reserved for Unity's real-time global illumination system, but if you're using like the GI system, area lit, and LTC GI, you're not going to be probably going to be using that. So it's relatively safe to use the third channel. If you want to be extra safe, you can use the fourth channel, but we're just going to use the third channel for this example. Now, in Blender, when you make a new channel, it just copies the UVs from the previous channel into the new channel. That's all well and good, and that gives us a good starting spot. But since all of our objects here are going to be using the same material, we select all of them. You notice when you select the third UV channel, they all have overlapping UVs. And for our shadow mask, we're not going to want that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange these UVs so that they're not intersecting with each other. Blender has a nice built-in function for that called Pack Islands under the UV tab here. You click that, it'll take all your islands and kind of arrange them a bit sporadically, but giving them some spacing so each island's not actually intersecting with each other. And you can like hold shift and click this margin tool to reduce the amount of space. So I think that's a good space. And as you see, if we have this third UV map selected, our other maps shouldn't have been affected, in theory. Okay, they kind of were. Why is that? I think that's because I had it all selected. I have to select them. So the first thing you want to do, make sure, is you have the third UV map selected on all of them. There you go. Now I can select all of them. Then I can highlight them and pack them while selecting the third UV channel. And that should have preserved it, maybe. Unless I'm crazy. Yeah, okay, it did. Yeah. Yep, so that preserved all our normal, regular UV maps and rearranged our third UV map. This is exactly what we want. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and export this with our my regular Unity exporting settings. And that should hopefully have overwritten this. It's a bit fast. We'll find out soon. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bake the shadow mask. Now you can bake these in Unity, but it's a bit of a pain because you have to kind of, you know, use the second UV map and trick it to kind of use the second UV map. Then you also have to ensure that the second UV map is consistent with your light maps and blah, blah, blah. It gets really complicated. So we're going to do it in Blender because we can keep everything separate from your Unity light maps, and it makes things a lot less messy in the long run. So how do we bake them? Well, the first step is we're going to need some lights and some materials. So on our object here, we're going to create a basic material, just call it like ShadowMask, and we're going to make it a diffuse with just a white color. Real simple. I'm just going to give all of them the same material. Cool. Now our second thing that we need to do is give the world some lights. Now, the way the channels work is based on the color of the shadow mask, meaning that if we were to give this room a green color and set this light to the green shadow mask, only areas in the shadow mask that are green will show this light. Anywhere that doesn't have any green, it won't show up. Same with the blue. So what we can do is we can just spawn some point lights. So we spawn in a regular point light here, and we can go into render mode, look inside, and you can kind of see it creates a bit of a shadow there. And if we set it to the green color, this will allow us to set it so that our light is only going to be able to illuminate this particular area. I'm going to put it a little higher because our source of our light's a little in the air. And that should give us something at least somewhat decent. The placement of your lights is kind of up to you, since you are just kind of like faking an effect. So I'm going to kind of put it like right there. And that should do the trick for me. Now I'm going to make it a little brighter. So set it to like 50 watts. And what I like to do is I like to reduce the bounces. So in Blender and most rendering engines and light maps that use ray tracing, say? The light actually bounces and creates, you know, proper actual global illumination, because that's how, you know, ray tracing works. It takes a ray from the light, or specifically the camera, and bounces it all around the room until it reaches the light source or back to the camera. And that creates, you know, it kind of fills the room with light. Well, that's very nice. We want to mask things out and make our shadows a bit more aggressive, so that it's a bit more obvious what our shadow mask is doing. So what I like to do is reduce the number of bounces. I believe by default it's set to 4. So what we can do is we can go to light paths, and where it says diffuse, where it says 4, we can reduce that to 1 or 0. 1 is probably better. At least having 1 bounce is probably good. And there you see, it makes the shadow a bit more aggressive. I think that looks a bit nicer. Same with this shadow, you can see it's a bit more aggressive. We can make it just a smidge brighter as well if we wanted to. There we go. That looks pretty good. And now all we gotta do is just duplicate this light and put it on the opposite side. We'll make it blue instead. And that will have this same effect where you can see there's a blue shadow there. It's a shadow there. And it doesn't matter if these colors are mixing, because it'll only grab a certain channel. So it's only looking at the green or the blue values when it's checking the shadows. It doesn't care about any other values when it's mixing. Alright, so now we got our lights. Let's go ahead and bake it. So we're going to bake our shadow mask by selecting all of our objects here. And we're going to go to the render tab. Well, first we're actually going to go and make a new window here and go to the shader editor. And in the shader editor, I'm going to Shift A and search for a texture node, or I think it's an image node, I'm sorry. Yeah, image texture node. I'm going to click new. I'm going to make it like something decent size, so like 2048 by, oh, not that, 2048 by 2048. We're going to call it a shadow mask tutorial. This is the image that our shadow mask is actually going to end up on. So then we're going to click OK. And we got this new image, and we can preview it in our image viewer or image editor. And by default, it's just a black texture. So now we're going to render it by going to bake. We're going to set it to just diffuse, since we only want the diffuse lighting. And make sure we still have all our objects selected. And we do. And we want to make sure our image node is also selected. Once we made sure all of that, we can... Now, you might want to make sure your device is set to your graphics card if you have a pretty good graphics card. And you can set your samples and such. I think these defaults are pretty good. I don't know if denoising actually does anything, so it does when you're making a render, but not when you're baking for some reason. I'm not really sure what that's about. Oh, regardless, I think our sample rate's gonna be at 4096, so I'm gonna hit bake and just let it do its thing. It should appear at the bottom here, maybe, unless I'm crazy. Well, it's baking. You can see here at this progress bar. It's doing something, yeah. So just give it a minute. There should be a progress bar at the bottom there. I'm not sure what's going on with that, unless I'm crazy. Alright, I guess I'm crazy. I don't know. Or I've hidden it or something. No, there it is. Yeah, it's just under my stupid bar here. But yeah, here's the progress bar. Just give it a minute. And you can see, yeah, it's baking into our third UV map layer instead of our first two. You can see it slowly building up. I think it's done. Yeah, okay, it looks like it's done. So we can preview it by going into material view here, just kind of plugging it in to the material output. And already you can see it's on the wrong UV map because by default it likes to try to force it onto the first UV map. So what we can do is drop a UV map node here and point it to our third UV map and just drag it into the vector. There you go. You see, it's a pretty decent bake. It's a bit noisy. Again, I'm not sure how denoising works in Blender for baking, but that should be fine. If you want to, I usually end up doing my denoising inside of Photoshop because I'm weird and it's a bit quicker. What I can do is I can show you how to do that. So if I believe if I were to where the heck is it? Yeah, there it is. So if I open that and then open this, and I think it would be, where the heck did I save it? Oh yeah, here it is right there. So I can actually close it. Go to Unity. There you go. And there's our mask. And I like to just use filter, noise, reduce noise. Turn the strength up. Don't preserve any details. At least for this scene, it's so simple. I'm just gonna hit OK. You can see it kind of made it a little better. Just keep spamming it until it looks like less shit. There you go. I used Control F to spam it a couple times, and yeah, there it goes. Looks a little better now. Yeah, it's a little bit weird in certain places, but that's fine. Save it. Let it do its thing, because Photoshop is slow. Come on. There we go. Okay, now we go to Unity, and what we'll want to do is we're going to want to set up our shadow masking. So, first thing we want to do, check our shadow mask, make sure it's good. Yep, that looks like the correct thing. And now what we want to do is set our left light to the blue mask. So we can do that by going into the GI point itself and scrolling all the way down to, you see the shadow mask section. It says off, and set it to mask 1, and we're going to set it to the blue channel. There you go. Then we'll do the same thing on this side for the green one. So for the green light, we'll set it to mask 1 and set it to green. There you go. Cool. So now what we need to do is we actually need to drop the shadow mask, enable shadow masking, and then drop it into our my brain is not working into the material. Thankfully, all of our blocks are using the same material, so we can just only have to click the main one. So first we want to make sure our UV set's correct. We're on the third UV set, so that would be UV2 since we're starting from 0. We're going to select UV2, and we're going to enable the red, green, and blue channels since we're using green and blue here. Then we'll enable the first shadow mask and drag in our shadow mask. And now it should be working properly. We'll turn down the red channel since we don't actually need it. Hopefully it's working correctly. I might be crazy. I think it may just be working correctly. Maybe. Yeah, it seems like it's working alright. So it's a little bit dimmer because our shadow mask is really dark. This is why I was trying to get it kind of brighter. But if I were to move it around, see, it's kind of illuminating certain areas, but it's not going into the darker areas. We might want to make it at a higher resolution with a higher, better UV map. You can kind of get the idea here. What I can do is increase the brightness of it. So we can increase the contrast a bit and then just scale the hell out of the brightness. This is just something I like to do. You could do this with all this Photoshop stuff with GIMP. You don't necessarily need Photoshop. I just like using Photoshop. So let's just scale the hell out of the brightness to get it a little bit more aggressive. See how that looks. Okay, now it's starting to get somewhere. Hit play. Okay, there we go. So I start to move it over here. Now you can see there's a bit of a shadow there. If I try to move it, you know, a bit like over here. See how it's like not actually moving over, not actually making it over to the side over there. We can turn up the brightness a bit more if we really want to see it. That's the thing about ShadowMask, is that they're going to affect the brightness of the world a bit, because it's, you know, masking out a lot of areas. So you may have to play with your lighting settings a bit to get it to look right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you can kind of see it there. Oh, if I tire it down, yeah. It's kind of going in that area, and if I move it forward a bit, and then move this one out the way, you see it's also blocking the green a little bit. You can see a little bit of the shadow there as well. And it works the same for the blue. Put it up here, a little closer, or put it over onto the side here. It's not able to actually kind of cross over. You can even do a better comparison. You can actually see what it's doing if I turn it down. You see it blocking some of the space there. Turning the range up might also help demonstrate it a bit more. So I think I can do that by just increasing the cone width right now. Yeah, there you go. Increase the width a bit. But you get the idea generally. I definitely recommend, I would recommend baking at a higher resolution than what I did here, because obviously there's not enough room. It makes everything a bit splotchy when there's not enough room. And not just a higher resolution, but just a higher, so either at 4096 or whatever, and then when you arrange it, since I just used pack islands, I didn't really think about too much about the actual size of the islands. You can see on this object here, this object has way too much space relative to the, you know, the floor. The floor has less UV map space than just this single face here, even though the floor is 10 times its size. So it's things like that that it's going to help. Pack islands is not the best. There's a bunch of better packing algorithms, like you can use ZenUV or PackMaster if you can get it, or just do it manually and just rescale everything and move it around. Yeah, this gets really more into just, you know, general UV mapping practices, since you're baking and such. This generally explains how it works. It blocks out areas. It prevents the light from illuminating certain parts of the map. It's very useful for that. But I think it might be better. Oh yeah, I can move the light around itself. But yeah, here you go. You can see it now. The light's not working at all in this area because we designated its lighting zone to be in front of this block here. So you end up with a lot of shadows like that. Same with this point here. Only in those areas. If I moved over here, it won't shine in this area either. Because, again, there's no blue in this part of the map. But yeah, that's basically the idea of shadow masking. Like I said, I definitely recommend baking it at a higher resolution and making sure your island UVs are reasonable sizes so that certain parts of the map get more space than others. And remember, you can have up to 3 masks. You don't have to dump everything into the same mask. You can have 2 more and split your map into different masks and such, and split it more by different material and such. This is just a very simple example how the basic idea works. Alright, hope you learned something. Hope it helped. I will see you later.